Finally, the day arrived, a day I had eagerly awaited. It was time to leave behind the incessant sight of your face and those freeloaders who had done nothing but take without giving back. They should be thankful for the generosity they've received all these years. Resolute, I declared, I won't be coming back. Thank you for everything until now. Swiftly, I packed my essentials and said goodbye to the house that had been my home at my in-laws for many years. As I stepped out, my mother-in-law's face revealed a hint of satisfaction at my departure. Yet, she was unaware of a poignant secret I carried with me. My name is Megan. I am 35 years old and work remotely from my home. I've been married to Charles for 6 years. Our marriage faced challenges in its 5th year when Charles's previously healthy father became seriously ill, requiring our immediate and constant attention. Initially hesitant to move in with my in-laws, I agreed out of necessity. Charles was their only family capable of providing care. Despite considering quitting my job to manage his care full-time, my company allowed me to continue working remotely due to my commendable performance record. However, living with my in-laws introduced immediate challenges, exposing me to the classic tensions between a mother-in-law and her daughter-in-law. Megan, hurry up and tend to the cooking and cleaning. How long will you be lazy avoiding your household duties? My mother-in-law would chide. I'm working right now. What do you mean I'm always just clicking away at the computer? I would retort. Amidst the household chores and caring for my ailing father-in-law, I managed to leverage my skills and return to my pre-crisis salary after about 4 months of intense effort. When my earnings finally matched their previous peak, I felt a deep sense of joy. Yet, my relentless dedication was fueled by a harsh financial reality. Charles's income alone was insufficient to support us. Despite my hopes for a more relaxed life ahead, the struggle persisted, leading me to contemplate setting aside some savings. As time went on, my financial challenges seemed to multiply inexplicably. It felt like the money in my wallet was evaporating. Curious about this troubling trend, I took a closer look at our expenses. To my dismay, I discovered that Charles had developed a habit of indulging in unnecessary luxuries. Additionally, my mother-in-law had a flair for the extravagant, often spending lavishly on various hobbies and social gatherings. Charles, always eager to please, frequently used our credit cards to fund not just work-related lunches but also extravagant parties with friends. Amidst this spending spree, the responsibility of household chores and caring for my ailing father-in-law fell squarely on my shoulders. I was using almost all of my income to cover our living expenses, making the idea of saving money seem like an unattainable dream. Concerned about our dwindling finances, I decided to address the issue. Charles, mother, it seems we've been spending excessively, I began cautiously. If this continues, we might deplete our savings entirely. Could you please consider cutting back on your expenses? Their response was far from understanding. Charles retorted, I don't want to appear stingy in front of my colleagues and subordinates. Can't you understand that? I understand maintaining good relationships with your coworkers is important, but it's not necessary to pay for their expenses every time, I reasoned with him. What about the nights out at girls' bars? Surely that has nothing to do with work. They harshly dismissed my concerns, leaving me frustrated and anxious about our financial future. As I tried to balance our household's needs with the ongoing financial irresponsibility, it became increasingly clear that I needed to find a way to curb the spending or risk serious financial turmoil. I confronted Charles. It seems like you just want to have fun, doesn't it? You come home drunk and start talking about your outings even when no one asks. It feels like you enjoy those times more than being with me. I couldn't hide my frustration anymore. My mother-in-law, however, simply laughed off my concerns and sided with Charles. I'm glad Mom understands, and she's right, Charles agreed confidently. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law defended her spending. If I didn't go to my classes, I'd just be stuck at home all day. I'm taking these classes with my friends to enjoy the time I have. I was left to grapple with their harsh words, which seemed to echo endlessly in my ears. They labeled me a terrible daughter-in-law, criticizing me for not earning an income, even though I was dedicated to managing the household chores and caring for my father-in-law. In their eyes, this made me unworthy of voicing any complaints, an idea that baffled me. Despite their judgment, I knew the truth. I was working diligently from home, contributing a steady income to our household while balancing housework and caregiving. Their skepticism and belittling attitude towards my remote work were disheartening. To add insult to injury, my mother-in-law had crafted a narrative for Charles that painted her as the sole caregiver for my father-in-law, depicting me as a lazy homemaker. This twisted perception of my role and efforts left me utterly speechless and pained by the injustice. Throughout the countless times I considered leaving the difficult situation at my in-laws, it was my deep concern for my father-in-law that kept me grounded. From the early days of my marriage, he had always treated me with genuine kindness, a stark contrast to the treatment I received from Charles and my mother-in-law. His sincere expressions of gratitude, often calling me a wonderful daughter-in-law, deeply touched my heart. Whenever he needed care, he would apologize for the inconvenience, always expressing gratitude for my dedication. These moments provided me solace and a strong sense of purpose in caring for him. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving him at the mercy of Charles and my mother-in-law. My father-in-law seemed acutely aware of the family dynamics and recognized my contributions not only in caregiving, but also in maintaining our household's financial stability. His words of appreciation were not just comforting, they fortified me, providing the strength to continue in an environment that often felt hostile. The fear of what might happen to the household without my stabilizing presence was significant, but my greater worry was for the well-being of my beloved father-in-law. Thus, I resolved to stay and provide him with dedicated care until he passed away a year later. His funeral was an emotional battleground for me. Amidst my profound grief, my tears were met with cold disapproval, adding to the weight of the loss. This reaction only underscored the complexity and emotional challenge of my situation, yet it also reaffirmed the importance of my role in his final days. "Why are you crying so much, Megan? The father-in-law has passed away. Isn't it natural to mourn like this?" I was questioned, yet my response only seemed to irk my mother-in-law. She accused me of making it sound like she had never taken care of him, but the reality was quite the opposite. My mother-in-law had been largely absent from my father-in-law's caregiving. Her focus on her hobbies and frequent social outings meant that the bulk of the caregiving responsibilities fell on me. Despite my efforts, she presented herself as the downtrodden and pitiful mother-in-law to those outside our immediate family circle, portraying me as the harsh and cruel daughter-in-law to our relatives. This portrayal seemed to make it appear as though I was being unfairly harsh on her. Even as I grieved, I found myself criticized by those who had little insight into the true dynamics of our household. Out of frustration, I began to distance myself from these relatives, a decision that Charles quickly noticed. Charles confronted me saying, "You embarrassed Mom in front of everyone." This accusation baffled me. "That makes no sense," I replied. "I was merely crying over the death of the father-in-law." "Yet, your mom found it odd how much I cried." "I never once said she hadn't taken care of him at all. I was simply expressing my sorrow over losing someone I deeply cared about." As the argument escalated, Charles accused me of insulting his mother and suggested that if their misunderstanding of my grief was so upsetting to me, maybe I should reconsider my actions. In defense, I reiterated that my tears were purely out of grief for the loss of my father-in-law, whom I had always cherished and cared for, not as a critique or insult to anyone else. After my father-in-law's passing, the tension between my husband and me escalated. leading to a fierce argument that required the intervention of relatives to calm down. Following this, I chose to remain silent towards my husband as the funeral proceedings wrapped up. Shortly thereafter, a lawyer arrived to discuss the will and the distribution of the estate. The lawyer began, "I'd like to go over the contents of the will regarding your late father's estate. Firstly, to his wife and daughter-in-law, Megan, he has left half of his cash assets to each of you. To his son, Charles, he has left the ownership of the family land and home." My mother-in-law immediately interjected, "If Charles gets the land and the house, why is Megan receiving an inheritance? She isn't related by blood." The lawyer replied, "Your husband was deeply grateful for the dedicated care Megan provided to him. He wanted to express his gratitude by including her in the inheritance. This decision is final and cannot be changed." Unable to accept this, my mother-in-law accused me. "I can't believe it. You were caring for him just to get the inheritance, weren't you?" I defended myself. "I've had a good relationship with my father-in-law since I married into this family. I took care of him out of love and respect to show my gratitude for how he always treated me." Despite her ongoing accusations, suggesting that my care amounted to psychological manipulation, my mother-in-law eventually exhausted her protests. The lawyer, resuming the discussion, affirmed, "That was your father's decision." This revelation was a vindication of my genuine affection and care for my father-in-law, affirming that his gratitude towards me was genuine and legally recognized, despite the bitter suspicions voiced by others. As the lawyer confirmed the terms of the will, expressing gratitude for my dedicated care, my mother-in-law's previously discontented expression unexpectedly turned into a smile. "Yes, that's great. I understand," she exclaimed with a nod. Confused, my husband asked her, "What do you mean?" It seemed strange for her to switch her stance so suddenly. With an air of satisfaction, my mother-in-law explained, "Now that Dad's gone, we no longer need to rely on Megan. Her inheritance is just like severance pay. We don't need her in this house anymore." She had grossly misunderstood my father-in-law's intentions, interpreting the will as an opportune moment to sever ties with me, rather than as a recognition of my contributions. Unbeknownst to her, this was exactly as my father-in-law had planned. Before his passing, he had confided in me his wish for me to be free from the constraints of living under the same roof as my in-laws after his demise. He designed the will not only as a show of gratitude, but as a clever ruse to facilitate my departure in a way that seemed natural to others, including deceiving my husband and mother-in-law. Misinterpreting his true intentions, my mother-in-law saw this as a chance to push me out of the family. Seizing the moment and concealing my actual desire to leave, I feigned shock and sadness. "Father-in-law, why would you treat me like this?" I lamented, giving the impression that I was just another caretaker in his eyes. Turning to Charles with tears in my eyes, I pleaded, "You can't understand Megan anymore, right? Why don't you just divorce her?" After a moment of contemplation, touched by the emotion I displayed and perhaps swayed by his mother's influence, Charles replied, "You know what? Let's get a divorce." This dramatic turn of events played right into the hidden plan my father-in-law and I had crafted, setting me on a path to regain my independence and start anew, away from the constraints and conflicts of my in-laws' home. After the reading of the will, Charles inherited the family home and land, and his mother received a portion of the cash. With these assets secured, Charles casually remarked, "There's no longer any need to worry about living arrangements, so it's okay if Megan leaves." "What do you mean by that?" I asked, although I knew too well. "Just what I said," Charles replied, his tone indifferent. "I hate to ask, but could you leave our house and agree to the divorce?" Realizing there was no place for me in their plans, I accepted the inevitable. "Understood. I guess there's no place for me here anymore?" With a controlled calmness, I opened the drawer, retrieved a document, and handed it to him. It was a notice of filing for divorce, prepared soon after our last major argument. Charles quickly signed the document, his relief palpable. Finally, I don't have to deal with you anymore. A non-working freeloader should just get out. You should be grateful we put up with you. Is that so? Okay, I understand. I'll leave. Thank you for everything up to now, I replied, masking the turmoil inside with a facade of gratitude. As I exited, my mother-in-law's face lit up with glee, blissfully unaware of what the future might hold for their household without me. I didn't hesitate. Once out of their home, I immediately submitted the divorce notice to City Hall. Arriving at the apartment I had secured in advance, I stepped into the spacious, empty room. The echo of my own words filled the space. Finally, I can be by myself. This is great. Overwhelmed with joy, I relished the newfound freedom, liberated from a marriage that had become increasingly suffocating. Here, in this new space, I could start fresh, embrace solitude, and rebuild my life on my terms. My deep gratitude goes to my late father-in-law for crafting a clever plan that facilitated my departure from the stifling environment at my in-laws' home. With this newfound independence, I settled into a comfortable life on my own, cherishing the freedom to continue my remote work. This lifestyle not only honed my time management skills, but also enhanced my productivity, leading to an increase in my income. I enjoyed a peaceful existence, free from any external meddling, until an unexpected call from my ex-husband Charles disrupted the tranquility. It had been a while since we spoke, and I was perplexed. "Why are you calling me, Charles? Weren't you the one who wanted me to disappear?" I asked. "Megan, please help us. We're in a pinch," Charles pleaded, his voice strained. I couldn't help but chuckle at the irony. "What kind of joke is this? My salary hasn't changed, but suddenly you're running out of money? How can you not manage?" With a mix of amusement and finality, I prepared to deliver a stark reality check. "That's because you no longer have my income to supplement yours. You squandered your entire salary on yourselves. Maybe it's about time you and your mother learned some financial responsibility as adults." Confused, Charles asked, "What do you mean? You still don't get it?" This moment underscored just how much they had relied on me without acknowledging it, and now they were feeling the consequences of their financial irresponsibility. It was a bitter lesson on the importance of prudence and planning, one that they were learning the hard way. I explained the situation clearly to Charles. "While you were indulging in luxuries, my salary of about $6,500 a month was covering our living expenses. Now I'm earning even more, and I'm doing it all without anyone holding me back." Frustrated and perhaps realizing his predicament, Charles made a desperate plea. "Megan, can't we start over? It was a mistake to let you go. I want to make things right." I scoffed at his sudden change of heart. "It's clear you're just after my income. Don't be ridiculous. I never want to see your face again. What happened to the inheritance your mother received? She should be living comfortably with that." Charles confessed, "It's about to run out. We spent it on a shopping spree and overseas trips, and lost half of it in the casino." Unmoved by his confession, I replied sharply, "A foolish mother breeds a foolish son. I have nothing more to say to you. I'm a stranger now, and I can't do anything for you, nor do I want to." Desperate, Charles implored, "Don't be so heartless. Help me. This has nothing to do with me. There's nothing more to talk about. I'm hanging up. Don't call me again." I declared before ending the call and promptly canceling the contract for the mobile phone I was using. A year later, while passing by my former mother-in-law's house, I noticed it had become an empty lot, likely sold due to financial struggles. Unperturbed, I continued with my life, enjoying my newfound spare time attending a wine class I had long been interested in. There, I met a man 3 years my senior who took our relationship seriously. After a year and a half of dating, we got married. He is the executive of a well-known company, humble despite his high salary, and with a warm, wonderful character. We respect each other's careers, leading to a fulfilling married life. Reflecting on these changes, I can't help but feel that, in a way, this was a form of retribution, a gift from my father-in-law, allowing me to find true happiness and respect in a relationship.